Well, hey there guys, Tom here. Welcome back to my movie channel and thank you very much for joining me for this, my review of the brand new MCU movie, The Eternals. So this is a movie that I think is fair to say it's been getting some mixed responses. There has been a lot of, talk and conversation online about how this is the first rotten MCU movie according to Rotten Tomatoes. Even though at the time of this recording, it is still the majority of critics like the movie, or at least mark their reviews as a positive review. And this was a film that I really wasn't sure what I was going to get walking in to see it last night. And if you saw, I put up my initial reaction, my straight out of the theater reaction. If you guys want to see more of those videos, make sure you let me know in the comment section below. So I did give my initial impressions. And if you've seen that video, you know that I loved this movie. Didn't just like it, I loved this movie. I thought this movie was really fucking great. And one of the more consistent praises that this movie's been getting is that it feels so different from anything the MCU has ever done before. It doesn't even really feel like an MCU movie. And I know there's been a lot of talk about, the MCU formula, which I don't think the MCU is as formulaic as a lot of other people do, mind you. But the Eternals really doesn't feel like it has that distinct Marvel DNA. It is something completely different, not just, from the way that it's shot and the way that it tells its story, but also the characters, the development of the characters, the interpersonal relationships and the dynamics between the 10 Eternals. And I'll say this right now, this might be an unpopular thing to say, but in one movie, and it just goes to show how good of a director Chloe Zhao is, because in one movie, she introduced us to new characters we'd never met before, and gave them more development, better interpersonal relationships than even the first Avengers or the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And you guys know, I love those movies, and I love the characters in those movies, and they did a good job with their character development and the character relationships and dynamics. But in Eternals, it's just on another level. And without giving too much away, throughout the movie, yes, the Eternals are a team, but of course from the trailers, we know that the Eternals were instructed not to interfere in human conflicts unless Deviants were involved. And that makes for some really interesting dramatic moments and scenes throughout the movie, and a lot of scenes of tension between the members of the Eternals, because some of them start to doubt that mission and start to think, well, maybe we should get involved in human conflict. Maybe there are ways that we can help them, but we're not allowed to, and we should be allowed to. And then you have other members of the Eternals, like the Selma Hayek character, saying, no, we've been instructed not to interfere, and that's what we're going to not do. Chloe Zhao did such a great job in this film she had to introduce us to 10 brand new heroes, main characters in this movie. And I think with a lot of directors, when they're dealing with 10 main characters, this is really an ensemble movie. Say what you want about who you think is, the one real lead of the movie, whether it's Gemma Chan or Angelina Jolie, that's up for debate. But there are 10 main characters in the film, The Eternals. Each of these characters has their own moment to shine. They have their own little arcs throughout the movie. The character development in this movie alone is better than the character development of some of the other Marvel characters that we've been following for the better part of a decade. And I'm not really trying to knock on the character development throughout the MCU, because for the most part, it's been really good, but it just goes to show how good I think the character development in this movie is, because I got really invested in these characters. I really, really did. A few standouts for me. So first of all, Thena, played by Angelina Jolie, look, she's not in the movie a lot. She's kind of in the background for a lot of it, but the scenes that she does have, and the development of that character and that character's relationship with, or friendship, I should say. It's not really a relationship. Her friendship with Don Lee's character of Gilgamesh. That friendship is one of my instant favorite friendships in the MCU. Those two have such a great dynamic, such a good rapport with each other, and it makes for some of the more emotional moments throughout the movie. Some of the most powerful moments in the movie, some of the most powerful scenes in the movie are between those two characters, when they're just sitting down and they're talking, they're having a heart-to-heart, or they're trying to protect one another when they're fighting Deviants. And I know a lot of people are going to, instant favorite's going to be Icarus or Cersei, and I get that. I love all the characters. There's not an Eternal in this movie that I don't like. Well, actually, no, I take that back. There's one Eternal character who I think is a bit of an asshole for the most part, and it worked for the movie too. I'm not going to talk about who it is because that might lead into spoiler territory. But again, the strongest part of this movie is the interpersonal relationships and the dynamics between the Eternals. And there isn't a lot of, massive MCU large-scale action sequences throughout the movie. There are action sequences in the movie, don't get me wrong. There is definitely some fantastic action in the movie. I love the action scenes in this movie. I really do. But there's not a lot when you compare it to other installments of the MCU. This movie's really almost pretty much purely a character piece on these group of individuals. But I want to marry Athena. She might go crazy and kill me, but I'll take my chances. And God, this movie's so good looking. It is such a beautiful visual feast. It really is. The way Chloe Zhao shot this film, very, very clearly using a lot of real locations, real forests, real beaches, real deserts, real locations, practical locations. It adds something to this movie that it's almost really hard to describe, but it gives this movie an extra layer of something, and I don't even know how to describe it, but it makes one hell of a difference. I wanted to touch on this though, because I saw a couple of critics who saw the movie like a week ago. I saw a couple of their tweets, and a couple of them drew some comparison between Eternals and Zack Snyder's Justice League, another movie this year that I loved. Having seen the movie, when I saw that, I went, that doesn't sound right. How the hell can you compare the two? But when you see the movie, I can see why I'm not going to think you're crazy if you see similarities between the two movies. And maybe more similarities than you might think. At least that's just me. People may watch it and go, I didn't think they were all similar. And they're not really as far as story's concerned, but there are elements of both that are pretty much the same. That's not a positive or a negative. I just thought it was fun to point that out. Now, look, I loved this movie. I've made no secret about that. This movie I thought was great. It is my favorite MCU movie so far this year. But this film isn't without its problems. It's not a perfect movie. I mean, not many movies are perfect. And none of my criticisms of the movie are real major ones. None of them really ruined the movie for me or took me out of the movie, but I do have some criticisms of this film, and one of the biggest flaws of the movie, and it could be a potential flaw, depends on each individual person watching the movie, but this Eternals is a very dense film. You've seen that said a lot. This movie throws a lot of information at you very, very quick, and often in one go, and in big chunks of scenes. There's just a lot of information. And so I can totally understand and see why that could be an issue for some people because, if you're not paying attention more than any other Marvel movie, you really have to pay attention to what's going on in this movie or you're going to find yourself getting lost. And that can be seen as a positive or a negative. For me, I didn't get lost, but watching the movie, I could totally understand. I could totally see people saying, I just got lost. I just didn't understand what was going on. There was just too much information being thrown at me. So I totally get it. If you get lost watching this movie in the story-wise or in all the information that it's giving you, I totally understand. It's also easy to get lost in this film because the film jumps around a lot throughout time. The Eternals have been on Earth for 7,000 years. And so, especially in the first half of the movie, it jumps back and forth between, present day MCU, and then you go 5,000 BC, and then, in another scene, you jump back to 140 AD. It does ping pong around a bit throughout history, and it totally worked for me, but especially my friend James, who I saw the movie with last night, the flashbacks got really annoying for him and really started to irritate him. And I think, one of his criticisms was it really affected the pace of the movie. And I can totally see that. Look, there are scenes in the movie that I think affected the movie's pacing and its cadence and slowed the movie down at times. And I think it's a valid criticism of the movie. I really do. I think there was probably a better way to a cleaner way to show these moments throughout the Eternals' history as they've been on Earth. But overall, I loved this movie. I really, really loved this movie. I cannot wait to see it again. And I really wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the movie. I'd seen a lot of the early reactions to the film. I'd seen the Rotten Tomatoes score, obviously. And, you know, it's a brand new set of characters. It's a brand new property being introduced into the MCU. I knew Chloe Zhao was a great director because I'd seen Nomadland. And if you haven't seen Nomadland, which is the film that, you know, she won her Best Director Academy Award for, go and see Nomadland, because like it's fantastic. And Eternals is really, really good, at least in my opinion. And I know everyone's not going to have the same opinion. You know, some of you might like the movie not as much as me. Some of you might like it more than me. Some of you may hate the movie. But whatever you think about Eternals, when you've seen Eternals and whatever you think about it, make sure you jump down in the comment section below and let me know what you thought about the film, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about movies and what we like and what we don't like, and let's just have a respectful conversation in the comment section down below. Thank you very much for watching, guys. My name is Tom, and I will see you guys next time.